Thanks very much, Neville, for your introduction, and thanks to all of you for having me here today, and to the organizers of the conference. I think, in a way similar to Augusto, I'm going to talk about an issue that in the G20 leaders conference or summit, which has just ended, was variously referred to, I guess, as a subtext or a secondary issue, or it was referred to, I heard at one stage, as an elephant or the elephant in the room, and that is the question of the environment and climate change. And if you've had a chance to look at the leaders' communique that was issued at the conclusion of the summit yesterday, clearly the main theme to come forward in that communique was the issue of economic growth. And the leaders have pledged to work towards lifting growth and creating jobs, working towards a stronger and more resilient global economy, and strengthening global institutions. However, if you look closely at the communique, you'll see that there are clauses 17 to 18 which make a fairly strong statement from the leaders about taking action on climate change and the environment. In other words, although it was a subtext, a secondary issue, and the elephant in the room, the leaders seem to be saying that climate change is also an economic issue. The environment is an economic issue. And so the leaders in their communique talked about collaboration on energy as being one of their priorities, improving energy efficiency, which the communique indicates is a cost-effective way to address rising demands of sustainable growth and development, and energy access and security. The leaders pledged to phase out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, recognizing the need in doing that to support the poor. They talked about strong and effective action to address climate change through sustainable development, economic growth, and certainty for business and investment. They talked about moving towards or working towards a legally binding outcome at Paris at the Conference of the Parties 21 in 2015. So next year in Paris, the leaders will again meet to talk about climate change, or the various nations will meet to talk about climate change. And the leaders have pledged to work towards some sort of legally binding outcome from that meeting. And then finally, they talked about paying into the Green Climate Fund, which of course would be used to pay for adaptation and mitigation of the effects of global climate change. So how then, the question is, and I'm only going to say a few things and throw out a few thoughts, how then can religion play a role in relation to the environment and climate change in the economic context? How can faith, perhaps that's the better way to put it, how can faith impact the environment? Well, we know that there are a couple of bodies that are already working on this. The Parliament of the World's Religions has made the issue of climate change and the environment a key theme for its 2015 Parliament, and they specifically want to look at how interfaith groups can lead the way in providing concrete changes aimed at adaptation and mitigation. And recently, the World Economic Forum, in September of this year, their Global Agenda Council on the Role of Faith, released a paper entitled Why Care? Why Care About Faith? That document demonstrates how the global challenge of the environment and climate change can become a local and a personal matter of faith, which can then in turn lead to collective action. The document itself talks about the fact that 84% of people globally are religiously affiliated. I'm just looking at the document now, the Why Care About Faith. 75% of people globally now live with government restrictions on their individual freedom of conscience or belief. Research confirms that where there is less religious freedom, there is less women's empowerment, less economic development, and more political instability, conflict, and terrorism. This is all from the World Economic Forum document. And that, the World Economic Forum argues, undermines society, increases inequality, weakens the economy, and is bad for businesses, organizations, and individuals. And it goes on to say that regardless of one's personal opinion of faith, there are three reasons why engaging with people and their beliefs is important and can improve the state of the world from an economic perspective. One, or first, is partnerships. And the World Economic Forum says that the world's challenges cannot be solved by any one state or non-state actor. To address common concerns, the Economic Forum says all need to come together and work through global communities founded on a shared moral and ethical understanding. Secondly, Reach and effectiveness is important. Communities and organizations based on religion and shared beliefs are present throughout the world and therefore have the capacity for service delivery coupled with the moral and ethical leadership exercised by religious leaders, and that is a powerful means of enhancing social welfare and promoting change in attitudes and practices. And finally, the World Economic Forum talks about transformation of conflict. This is what the World Economic Forum says, a shared understanding of religious identities and values can be instrumental in prevention or resolution of conflict, and often a transformation of heart in favor of resolving conflicts is the precondition to sustainable peace. The document then lists 6 areas in which religion and faith may play a role from an economic perspective. The first of those is climate change and environmental conservation. The second is civil society and civic engagement. The third is fragile states and conflict prevention. The fourth is human rights promotion and protection. Fifth, food security. And finally, social media and digital networking. And there are issue papers or essays on each one of those points. And I just want to talk a little bit about, obviously, the climate change and environmental conservation. So the question then arises, what can people of faith do in relation to the environment and climate change? Well, what religious traditions all tend to share and tend to focus on, in addition to principles of stewardship of the environment, are a concern for the earth and principles of how we should act when making decisions and in relation to exercising choice about the things that we control. And there are 2 ways in which that can happen. In every case, religion tells us that we must act out of the principle of stewardship, that we are acting on behalf of some higher power, God, deity, or deities, and so we are given a sacred responsibility in relation to the earth. And secondly, that we must consider the other, those who have a position or a perspective or an interest which is other than our own. That is the person known as the other. That can be an individual or institutions. And religions all tend to say that we should focus on the other when we are making those decisions about the resources, the goods, whatever it is that we control. Those 2 principles, stewardship and concern for the other, can help in going some way to achieving collective action in relation to adaptation and mitigation in relation to the environment and climate change. And in fact, the World Economic Forum has listed a couple of what they refer to as best practices and partnership examples. They list these sorts of things. The Africa Muslim Environment Network, or AMEN, which operates in as a network of Muslim and Muslim organizations in Kenya, Zambia, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. And the primary purpose of AMEN is to share information about successful environment-friendly development initiatives by mosques, Islamic organizations, and the diverse Islam communities in Africa. Or the United Planet Faith and Science Initiative, which unites prominent religious figures and leading scientists and initiated rounds of web-based meetings of scientists and faith leaders from around the globe to mobilize action for ecological sustainability. Or the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance, which was initiated to provide safe drinking water, improved sanitation and proper hygiene to communities around the world. And the list goes on. So there are a number of existing partnerships that are looking at faith as a means of providing the individual and personal initiative in order to then move towards collective action in relation to adaptation and mitigation. And I just want to conclude with a quote that's taken from the World Economic Forum document, and it is as follows. Of course, religion can also contribute to the problem, but the best of faith can defeat the worst of religion. For societies to be civil, states to be stable, and for economies to flourish, faith is essential. Thank you.